Hello and welcome to India's World. After more than a decade of negotiations, a nuclear deal with Iran has finally been reached. The deal prevents Iran from moving towards nuclear weapons for a period of 10 years in exchange for lifting of international sanctions. However, keeping Iran out of the nuclear club is not the only expected outcome of the deal. The supporters of the deal hope that once Iran's isolation is over, it might help in reducing rather than escalating tensions in West Asia. However, the critics of the deal, ranging from US Republicans to Israelis and Saudi Arabians, think that exactly the opposite might happen. They think that unshackling Iran from sanctions will free up resources which Tehran can then use to create more trouble in the region. To discuss the likely impact of the Iran nuclear deal on West Asia, we have with us a very distinguished set of experts. We have with us Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, a formidable diplomat. He was India's foreign secretary and has been ambassador to Russia, France, Turkey and Egypt. We have with us Professor A.K. Ramakrishnan. He is a professor at the Center for West Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. And we have with us Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty. He's been India's High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Ambassador to Thailand and Philippines. But more importantly, he's served in Indian missions in Cairo, Jeddah and Tel Aviv and speaks Arabic. I welcome you gentlemen to this discussion. Mr. Sibal, let me begin with you. Are there concerns that a sanctions-free Iran will flex its regional muscle even more after the nuclear deal, and are these concerns justified?
Well, I think there will be a change in the regional balance of power that is inevitable. And Iran has been actually taking up this position as part of their whole relationship with the West, that their regional role must be recognized. And legitimately so. They have a population of 79 million people, highly educated population with a very big technological base, etc., etc., and of course enormous resources. So they are a real regional power. They have been constrained and constricted after 1979 because of the revolution, of the Mullah revolution. Now, with the lifting of sanctions and normalization of relations with the United States and the West in general, yes, room will open for them to be able to exert their regional weight, and other powers, Saudi Arabia, Gulf countries and others who are currently, including Israel, campaigning against what the US has done, will have to recognize the facts on the ground that they'll have to treat Iran not as a pariah and an isolated power, but as a regional power whose legitimate role is being recognized, and therefore the equations will change. That doesn't mean the end of the problems, but yes, there will be a change in the nature of relationship in West Asia. Okay.
Professor Ramakrishnan, would the easing of restrictions on financial transactions free up resources? That means more money will be available to Iran. Therefore, some people say they will buy more weapons. And the proxy armies that Iran supports in the region will benefit from it. You know, the Shia militias of Iraq, the Hezbollah, the Lebanese military force, and all those Shia forces that are propping up the Assad regime in Syria.
Surely Iran will have more money. That's one thing that's very clear from the deal. The frozen assets will be available. But there is an embargo on arms purchase for some more time. And so that scenario will emerge a little bit later.
But it will emerge? It
will emerge. But the immediate priorities for Iran, I think, is domestic economy. Because it's the sanctions all these years have affected them. Some positive results of that is also there for the development of Iranian technology and other things. But I think the Saudis and the Israelis are worried more about a strong Iranian economy rather than Iran acquiring weapons. Because a strong Iran in that sense, an enduring Iran with its regional status, would be a long-term kind of, force to be reckoned with and to be dealt with by these opponents of the deal.
Pinak, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has called the deal a historic mistake. And he said it would make it easier for Iran to back its proxies in the Middle East. I'm pursuing the same question that I was asking Professor Ramakrishnan. So do you agree with him, considering that Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has said that his country would continue its support to people in Palestine, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Bahrain and Lebanon, even after the nuclear deal.
You see, support to Palestinians is not the issue. The Israelis have some justifiable reasons to be worried. And although I think the constraints that have been put on the Iranian nuclear program should ease those problems. But don't forget that the Iranians have consistently said that they would wipe Israel off the map. Even if you look at Iranian interlocutors on Western television, they don't even mention the word Israel. They keep on saying those who have occupied Palestine. You know, that's the kind of thing they use. So Israel has some justifiable reasons to be worried. Because let us see that, you know, we have been talking about breakout times. So 15 years down the road, Iran may well become a nuclear weapons power if they wish to. They have kept the wherewithal to do so. And that is what I think worries Israel, if there is no change in Iranian behavior.
Okay. But Sibal, besides Israel, is Saudi Arabia a clear loser as a result of the Iran nuclear deal? And is the new alliance between Iran and the US, so let's say the new emerging relationship between Iran and the US, a direct affront to Saudi sensibilities, and might this force them to turn towards Russia and China?
Well, you know, when we discuss these issues, naturally we cannot escape from the kind of structural discourse that the West has built around this issue. When they talk about Iranian having proxies, so you can easily say that all the Gulf countries and some other states are proxies of the United States of America. And the relationship between Israel and some of these states, we know what it is. And certainly Qatar, Saudi Arabia have clandestine dealings with Israel. So they, in some cases, are also being used by Israel as their proxies. So I don't buy this kind of thing. Now, the Shia-Sunni divide in the Islamic world is a historical fact. And Iran represents the Shia power. And Saudi Arabia, because of its fact that it has the two holy mosques and Hijaz and everything else, is supposed to be, and with their Wahhabi ideology, the center point of the Sunni world. But otherwise, there's no comparison. No comparison between Iran and Saudi Arabia as civilizations, as countries, as real nations, etc., etc. Therefore, for Saudi Arabia to project itself as a competitor and as a rival of Iran can only be in the purely Sunni sense, not in any other sense.
Not in a geopolitical sense.
Not in a geopolitical sense. Well, no, geopolitics is important because the United States is involved behind all this. But the fact is, and the Iranians say that and some others say that Saudi, the House of Saud, has interest in projecting the Shia menace of Iran because of their own survival as the House of Saud, so that they should separate the people of Saudi Arabia and the House of Saud, which is not a democratic country. So I would look at this in a more sophisticated way and not look it through the prisms that the West has created in order to justify some of their past and present policies.
Yeah, that's a good point you make, but we need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again with this interesting discussion in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the likely impact of the Iran nuclear deal on West Asia. Professor Ramakrishnan, what do you say to those who say that Iran has actually engineered its rehabilitation in the international community without being asked to compromise on its self-image as a revisionist power in West Asia, as somebody who exports revolutions?
I agree with that to a great extent, because Iran, as has been pointed out earlier, has been seeking a kind of regional status as well as recognition from the international community, and it is slowly being integrated, and the deal is extremely significant in that sense. And that is one of the most important aspects of the deal.
But as an exporter of Shia revolutions?
I agree with the point that the Shia factor is stretched too much. Because, for example, in Iraq, both Iran and Saudi Arabia wants a restriction of the IS growth. because it's a threat now to Saudi Arabia, even though Saudi Arabia initially supported them in Syria and so on. So obviously there is deep-seated skepticism and rivalry between the Iranians and the Saudis. That will be there. But there are certain areas where they have to work together. And if the US-Iran relations improve, and there's all chance for that, and the Saudis are obviously, bargaining for something more in this context from the United States. And you could see that there are common interests in play.
Pinak, let me just pursue this point for a little bit more. Do you think the influx of Iranian financial support to the government in Damascus or to the Houthis in Yemen would actually make any difference to the ground situation? These conflicts were there even without Iranian financial support, and they will be there even with Iranian support. How much difference would that make?
It's very unlikely that it will make too much of a difference, because I think Iran's main purpose would be for consolidation and rebuilding its own economy, because that is what it's going to, that would be the first priority for the Iranian government. And I think the people are supporting the Iranian government primarily because of the damage that has been caused to the Iranian economy. They need huge investments in the oil and gas sector to modernize. They don't have civilian aircraft. In fact, one of the points in the deal was that Iran will be allowed to import civilian aircraft. Even that was being denied to them. So those are the primary factors. Yes, of course, they will continue to support their allies in the region, which they were doing in any case, even before the deal. I think they will continue to, and maybe they'll write out a few more checks to them in terms of a little extra support. And like the IS, for example, I think everybody is now basically coalescing together to jointly confront the IS. And there, I think even Saudi Arabia is now wondering as to what kind of forces they have unleashed.
We will discuss IS in a bit, but let's look at it another way, Ambassador Sibal, that after the deal, when Iran is coming from the cold, could Iran actually become a stabilizing factor, a key factor in bringing stability to Syria, for example? That you could actually have a regime change minus Assad, where Iran is able to maintain its leverage, but opposition is also accommodated.
Well, I think what happens in Syria will depend much more on the Western policy towards Syria, US and the European Union, rather than anything else. They are the ones who destabilized Syria.
But could Iran become a key broker?
No, because Russia is also involved. And Russia's interests, geopolitical interests, are very vital in sustaining Syria, not necessarily the Assad regime, but preventing the breakup of Syria and the dismemberment of Syria, and Syria walking into, if you like, the Western camp. So Iran is not the only player. Russia is a much stronger player in that regard. And China also would have interests of not the same as in the case of Russia, but in terms of management of international relations and regime change policies, etc. China would also, as they have shown in their conduct in the Security Council, they would have interest also not to allow the West and the Gulf countries to do what they please in Syria. And what has been mentioned earlier with the emergence of the IS, which is now positioned in parts of Syria and Iraq, there is a developing commonality of interest between all players, virtually, that this monster has to be controlled. So to answer your question, I don't think that Iran would distance itself from Syria, from the actual regime in Syria. But yes, on Assad, if there is a way out to have him removed through a process of consensus within the country, they would not oppose it.
Professor Ramakrishnan, now that the Iranian nuclear deal is done, hasn't it freed up time and space to collectively, with Iran, address other regional issues? For example, Islamic State being one of them. So do you think there will be now greater cooperation, collaboration in dealing with the Islamic State?
Actually, Iran can play an important role in regional matters But that in itself is the worry for other actors within the region. And therefore it can play both ways. But I think the integration of Iran into the international system would make Iran a much more important and responsible kind of regional actor because it wants to...
Regional actor is one thing. What I'm asking is, would it become a stabilizing factor in the region, one? Two, up to now, the collaboration between America and Iran, there was tacit cooperation in dealing with the Islamic State. Would it become more open and more sustainable?
I think so. Yeah. Because that kind of negotiations have been going on for quite some time between the United States and Iran.
Short interjection. Actually, who has destabilized this region? Not Iran. It's the United States and the West that have destabilized this region, whether it's Iraq or whether it's Syria or whether it's Libya. So why put all the blame on Iran? Absolutely. Iran has played a defensive role in terms of protecting its regional interests. And what is wrong if they want to protect the larger interests of Shia and have what they call a Shia axis as against a Sunni axis? Because the roots of terrorism in today's situation, which also threaten India potentially, are from Sunni extremists, not the Shia extremists.
Okay, all right. You want to say something on this?
Well, I would like to say that the view from Israel, for example, would be that Hezbollah, which is a Shia organization, they regard them as terrorists, and they are supported by Iran
and Hamas.
So there is an element of the Sunnis telling or the Israelis telling that there is also Shia terrorism. I mean, that is also a fact.
Okay, but Sunni terrorism is predominant.
Well, yes, in a way, yes, that is true. But the other side of the coin is that.
Okay. Okay. All right, we need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the likely impact of the Iran nuclear deal on West Asia. Ambassador Sibal, Iran's enemies believe that the Iranians are hell-bent on acquiring nuclear power, that they have just done a short-term deal, that we will not move towards weaponization for a certain period of time in return for certain concessions. But after that, they may well go nuclear. Now, is there a danger that because of this understanding, Saudi Arabia will say that there is a Shia bomb and now there should be a Sunni bomb too, a Sunni state, which means Saudi Arabia should also possess a nuclear weapon?
But then, you can turn the argument the other way, saying there's already a Sunni bomb with Pakistan, and therefore the Iranians should have a Shia bomb. So, I mean, that is no justification for Shia bomb or Sunni bomb or this or that. There's no reason why Saudi Arabia should want to have a nuclear weapon, though I might say there are some people who say there's already is an arrangement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia that Pakistani nuclear weapons, which they have financed, would be available to Saudi Arabia.
If Pakistan was not willing to send its army to Yemen, why would they give their nuclear weapon to Saudi Arabia?
Because that is much more visible if they send their troops and everything else. But the nuclear business is very clandestine. You never know, what is happening behind the scenes. But leave that aside for a moment. I think I would like to believe that the Iranians would have no interest in going nuclear after 15 years. If they really wanted to go nuclear now, when there was a real threat in terms of regime change, and they've seen what has happened around them in Iraq, Libya, and in Syria, they had every reason, like North Korea, to somehow go nuclear and then present the West with an extremely difficult choice. But they have not done so. So 15 years from now, when they have integrated with the international community, when they have tied up, they have networked with financial and other and oil interests all over, and their regional role has been recognized without a nuclear weapon. In fact, why should they go nuclear? In fact, that's what they say, that our regional role has already been recognized as a result of the nuclear deal. So actually, we've got all the advantages that we wanted in terms of an understanding of the United States without a nuclear bomb. So why should they have a nuclear bomb? Unless 15 years from now, the whole landscape changes very drastically and other forces and reasons emerge for Iran to go nuclear, I see no logical reason why Iran should go nuclear after 15 years.
And therefore nobody else either.
And therefore nobody else either.
Okay. Professor Ramakrishnan, Iran and US are still at odds over Syria. In Yemen, the United States provided logistics support to the Saudis for blockading the Houthis. The Fifth Fleet still is based in Bahrain. the Gulf countries are needed by America for stabilizing the energy market. So can one say that the US will find difficult to balance its emerging relationship with Iran with its existing relationship with the Gulf states, or can the two sit together comfortably?
It takes a lot of effort to do that, given all what has happened over the region from 1979 onwards. But we have the history of the United States balancing these two powers, Iran and Saudi Arabia, the Nixon Doctrine, for example, the twin pillar policy that the Americans had in the 70s in the region. There's no reason why that cannot work. Efforts are required for that to happen, because now the gap in perception of Saudi Arabia and Iran, it has increased because of the regional developments. But the Americans can do it if they invest a lot of time and energy for that.
Okay. Pinak, let's talk about India. Do you think India will now need to rethink its West Asia policy in view of the sort of reintegration of Iran into the international community? And has our policy been relatively sort of weighed more in favor of the Gulf states and Israel of late?
Well, India will have a tightrope and a balancing act to do, because India does have interests in Iran's energy market. It has interests in Iran's, Iran has an interest in Afghanistan. I think what kind of a role Iran will play in Afghanistan is something that we'll have to see, and hopefully a stabilizing role there as well. And Iran's energy market, and it's coming into the oil sort of production chain, will obviously reduce prices or stabilize at least at low levels, which is very good for us because we save a lot of money. But yes, I think India has, inclined more towards the Israel and the Saudis for the time being. But Iran coming back and being reintegrated will, of course, we will have to be a little more balanced in that. And how do we do that is, of course, the challenge that Mr. Modi will face when he visits that region.
So, what do you think? What will be the how does Iran's rise as a regional power impact India, and how can India leverage the influence it already has in Iran? Because besides all the things that Pinak has said, after all, our only route to Central Asia for trade is through Chabahar, where we are building the new port.
Well, insofar as Iran's situation is concerned, I just answer your question. Even Russia and China have had to take into cognizance, and they participated in the UN sanctions against Iran.
That's true.
Therefore, India had no choice but to subscribe to not only UN sanctions but also US sanctions. And therefore, our relationship was diluted considerably. Now, the doors will open, but we'll face a lot of competition from other countries. Already the German minister, vice chancellor, has gone with a big delegation to Iran yesterday. And much of what Iran needs in terms of rehabilitating its economy and its oil industry will come from the West. But we may also have openings there in Farzad and oil field and other areas that were under discussion prior to the sanctions. And you mentioned rightly that Iran remains a very important country for transit rights. When the regime opens up more and it is more comfortable with the outside world, then many of these transit projects will become a reality. For the time being, because of the closed nature of the regime, suspicious nature of the regime, the pressures they feel from outside, the manner in which Iran internally, there are a lot of problems in terms of actually activating these regional routes, including these transit routes, including Chabahar. So I think there's a lot of hard work ahead for us in terms of gaining a share of the Iranian pie as Iran opens up.
Would you like to say something on this, and how India can leverage the advantages it has in Iran?
I agree with the point that hard work is needed because of the old IAEA vote. The kind of perception that Iran has developed on India, that change, that has to be worked upon. Otherwise, I think there's immense possibility.
Okay, we've run out of time. I would like to thank all of you. We could have gone on for some more time, but there are time constraints. So thank you very much, Ambassador Pinak, Ranjan, Chakravarty, Professor A.K. Ramakrishnan, Ambassador Kanwal, Sibal, for participating in this discussion. That is all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Till then, goodbye, and thanks for watching India's World.